Welcome to the Survive, Scale, Soar podcast. Hear and learn through the success of others how to build the life and business you deserve. Learn to overcome failure, what it means to seek out growth, and how to become the best possible version of yourself. And now, here's your host, coach, entrepreneur, husband and father, and author of the #1 best-selling book, Survive, Scale, Soar, Jeremy Williams.
And welcome back to the Survive, Scale, Soar podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy. And today we have an amazing guest, Rick Borden. He's an urban farmer, a real estate broker with Keller Williams Realty, a scholar, practitioner, ethnographer.
Ethnographer.
Yeah,
it's a tongue twister.
Yes, tongue twister for me, and from Scottsdale, Arizona. And we're going to be talking today about social media. While I've got several people that are listening to this that are going to be business owners, this is going to not only apply to those that have businesses. This is a life conversation today, and I'm really excited about this because Rick is the expert on social media. But before we dive in, I want Rick to tell us a little bit about who he is. He's also a veteran, so thank you, Rick, for your services. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Well, thanks for that introduction. And I am, and I'll just kind of tee off where the last one, that can trip a lot of people up, and it trips me up too sometimes, is ethnographer. And I think for the sake of this conversation, it would be interesting to kind of find out how I got to where I am today, and how I really got into ethnography and what that is. Back in 2019, when I was attending Mega Camp, I had the pleasure to listen to Jay Papasan, and he was talking about the one thing, and I was in the back, and I was just getting ready to jump into an endeavor. And what that endeavor was I took all of the challenges that are not challenges, but all the categories that are located on page 114 in the One Thing book, starting with spiritual, and then there's 6 more that ends in the financial side. And I asked Jay during that during his presentation, I said, had anybody ever gone through all 7 categories one at a time and then just have a perpetual 66-day challenge and go through the whole entire thing? And Jay at that time had recommended not to do it, which is really the bad thing to tell me, because I already had made up my mind to do it. And
challenge accepted, right?
Challenge accepted. But I understood from looking through Jay, the lens of Jay, I understood why he would perhaps not want somebody to do it. But what I didn't share, and out of being respectful to the time of the audience and Jay, I had been doing 66-day challenges for years. I have failed at high levels. I have succeeded at high levels. And I had gone through a period in my life where I knew that change really needed to take place. And I'll tee this up a little bit. My motto my entire life, which I had no clue why, and it still is today, slow start, strong finish. When I turned 55, Jeremy, I said, it's time for the strong finish. Like, it's time for the strong finish. I'm due. I'm ready for it. God had prepared me for it, and my faith and everything was lining up. So I said, game on, I'm going to do it. I put much thought into it, because again, if you slow start, you go to the strong finish. If I was to do a consecutive 66-day challenge through all 7 categories, I wasn't going to do it just to do it. I wanted it to leave a lasting impact in my life. So the very first challenge that I did, Jeremy, I started at the top, which is spiritual. And I prayed for myself in the mirror as if I were somebody else, praying for myself. And I didn't know why God wanted me to do that. I had no problem praying for, say, you, Jeremy. If you were to call me up and say, Rick, I need prayer, here's what's happening, we would pray right there and then for God's will and favor over whatever is happening in your life. But I didn't look at myself as perhaps worthy enough or It was awkward. I really don't know. But that day started a 511-day ongoing safe to fail experiment. And what I mean by that is I gave myself permission to fail. And what I did is, and what I do today still, is I document all of these journeys. I do journals. I'll take pictures. I'll shoot video, whatever it is, whatever it means to me to document that journey. That's what I did. Hence, starting my really a career in ethnography and helping others out, including myself. But I did start that 511-day journey in August. I started my doctoral degree in October. So I went through this journey as an ethnographer, documenting that while going through my doctorate. And I tell you what, it was amazing. I cited and quoted this book the entire time I was in my doctoral degree. And I went through with the same cohort, the same 26 people. And I have several that are one thing practitioners now themselves. They just live and breathe. But I want to share with you guys a little bit about that. I started each challenge. I did 66 days. Then what I did is I took 1 week, Jeremy, and I synthesized what I went through. What happened? What worked? What didn't work? And how can I share this, what I'm learning with the world, which kind of tees up our conversation about social media and what that entails. So that's kind of a little bit about me, my backstory, how I got started, a little bit about what ethnography is, and my journey in life to have a strong finish.
So before we jump into social media, because I know that's why everybody's here, and you're going to share some things that are going to blow some people's mind. What did you learn most about yourself in that experience?
Oh, my favorite hashtag, get over yourself. Like, really? I mean, ego showed up during these prayers. They were every day, and I still pray for myself in the mirror every day. And now it's very poetic, and it comes with much responsibility, because what I'm praying over, I'm asking for God's will and favor in my life. And when it shows up, I can't be afraid. I can't not have a conversation. I cannot not execute on something he's delivered to me. And I have a personal relationship with Christ, and we talk every day. He's my accountability partner. He's my coach. He's my mentor. He's my father. He's my best friend. He's the best accountability partner you could ever have if you take it serious. And the other thing I learned is God has an amazing sense of humor, and will readily humble a person like that. And I've accepted that, and I'm okay with it. And I've learned to be really, really vulnerable, and to not give any ounce of thought about what another person thinks of me or what I'm doing, as long as I'm serving my Lord and Savior, and I'm just head down in the scripture and doing what's right. I don't have to worry about anybody else thinks, because I'm only here to please him. And if I can do that, the light in my heart shines, and it just spreads. It just spreads. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but I'm going to stick with get over yourself. I had to get over myself and get out of the way.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's powerful, a powerful message. I think a lot of us need to hear. I need to hear it too. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So social media, what got you started? I know you're working on your doctorate program right now, and you're getting near to defending your paper. And you've been doing this for a while. This isn't something you just woke up last year and started. You've been working on this for years, from the inception of inception of social media, and you've been studying this and paying attention to it and seeing what it's doing in our lives, right? What got you turned on to wanting to study and know this deeper?
Years ago, we moved from Minnesota to Arizona. Our grandkids, Jeremy and our sons, both of our boys live in Minnesota. One of the main reasons I saw the potential of social media was to stay connected with my grandkids. And, while I may not be talking to them, I can see the baseball pictures. I can see the school stuff going on. I can see what was happening in their life as long as, our kids were uploading and staying active on social media, which they were. But I'd have to say once I realized, what was happening and the potential of social media, in terms of disruption, positive and negative, that's when I really started having eyes on it. And for me, I immediately went to how can I utilize this tool in a way that will, say, benefit me, help me as an ethnographer, kind of share my story. As a coach and accountability partner, it allowed me to kind of stay in touch and again, community, if you will, that social capital. And then I really started getting into it. I saw when memories, like when the memories started showing up, that hadn't always happened, but all of a sudden it did. I thought, okay, so this pulled something up from 2 years ago. Interesting. And then hashtags became popular. And I'm like, okay, now we're cooking. Now I can go in, whether it's on a news media, on a business profile, not a profile, but a thread, really any thread at all that I was interested in, where I wanted to document, something that had happened, a pivot or a transition. So I started using keyword or hashtags and different keywords to document my journey, because I knew at some point, I hoped that these memories would still show up. Well, I can go back 12 years, Jeremy, and I can pull up. I've kept a log of the different hashtags I used, the intent in which I used them. So I knew, because 30 years from now, or 20 years from now, if this is still around and hashtags are still there, I needed to know how I was, categorizing these things. So it made meaning to me, and perhaps after I'm gone, make meaning to somebody else, so that they could kind of go back and look at the stuff. But all of a sudden, these hashtags started showing up in my memories, Jeremy. And today's election day. I've been doing this for several elections. And on these hashtags, and the day before election and on election day, you can see the temperament, the mood of the people. And now, unfortunately, the division, the division of what is happening. It's so easy for keyboard warriors, Jeremy, to light somebody up and to hate on somebody. The other side of that, I've created communities, and one is called When Dogs Go to Heaven. It's a Facebook page. And then I have another one called Minding God's Business. Well, these same concepts, these communities are just filled with joy. They're filled with love. They're filled with compassion. They're filled with grieving. They're filled with sorrow. Everything is in there. But there's a population that lifts these people up and gives them a sense of hope and real connection. That's a real positive way that social media can kind of play its role. So it's kind of how we got started.
So I think what I'm hearing is it's the intention of the user. Like, you could use it in a really bad way to tear somebody down, but you could also use it in a really good way to connect and form community and build a deeper relationship.
Accurate. Very accurate.
What do you think? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the same person, the same user can spread the love, the joy, and the hate. Something to keep in mind.
That's interesting. I've never really thought of it that way. Yet, now that you've brought it to my attention, I could think of some of those people that can do all three. Absolutely. What do you think is the most concerning aspect? I mean, and let's maybe narrow the conversation primarily to Facebook today. Most people are on Facebook.
Okay.
But it probably apply across the board. What do you think is the most concerning aspect of social media today?
I'm going to ask you to kind of unpack that. Are you throwing on the table like a just broad sense, or are we looking at individual? Are we looking at children use?
I want to talk about data.
Business.
Like I want to talk about data. So when we're using Facebook and we post pictures, or we post a comment, or we share a location, I don't think we think about the consequences of that. So
I know we don't.
Yeah. So when it comes to concerning aspect, let's narrow it down, because I know we could probably do 10 different topics and go all day. Let's look at just the data.
Perfect. And that's why I wanted to kind of clarify that to get a little bit of direction. The number one in my book, the number one concern, regardless of who is on social media, is the data, what they are doing with our data, how they are gathering the data. And at the end of the day, to really like fast forward this, Jeremy, we are the product. This book I bought. You're the book. I'm the book. We are the product. We are absolutely being monitored. Everything that we do, not just from Facebook, it starts with the phone. Like this is really one of the things that gets Facebook to be as active and have as much data as they do, as well as Google and Facebook. But yeah, Jeremy, it's the data. Everything we do has an algorithm for it. Facebook, for example, they have a patent on cracked screens and how a cracked screen has a unique identifier to us versus a regular screen. So regular screen, they can see us, but what if somebody drops their phone and breaks it? I have a cracked screen right now. Facebook has a patent that can still, with a cracked screen, make sure who's on that phone. So that's how that's huge. They really want to know who's using their Facebook, who's using that data, that application, and how they do it. I'd say data, and here's the other side of data. What are we not receiving from Facebook? Do we have an algorithm that's made specifically for what's going on in Rick's head and what Rick is interested in? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Your feeds and my feeds are different. Now, we may have people in our network, mutual people in our network, so we can see the conversations. But as far as, what's showing up as ads when I'm out driving around, they're creating a unique experience for me. That I can buy, that other people, the subscribers, the big tech people, the advertisers, they want to know what I'm doing, and that's a huge concern.
So is it just the keystrokes they're monitoring, or are they monitoring voice? I've heard that before. Well, is it listening in to me?
Yeah, everything, Jeremy. Everything. They're tracking you, where you're going, your keystrokes, where you drive, where you're walking into. You could be walking in, you could be on Facebook, you could just have your phone sitting next to you, like I do on my desk, and I could be talking to you on a great recorded meeting, and I could mention something that I want to buy snickerdoodles for my brother's birthday, which isn't happening tomorrow, and chances are real likely that a snickerdoodle recipe ad or a place for me to buy snickerdoodles will show up in my Facebook feed sometime today. Test that out.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at it. I know I was buying a car a few months back. My daughter is now driving, which is terrifying. So she got my car, and I was looking for cars, and it was amazing just having the conversations of what type of car that I wanted. I'd go over to Facebook, open it up, and there's that car.
There's that car.
I could buy it. The financing for it. I mean, everything was right there.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
So I know in that world, because I've seen that side working with real estate companies on the technology side of things. There's the aspect of, well, that data can provide great things. There's also the fact that they have the data. We don't know what data they have or how much data they have, and they can be used for ill intentions. Like, what is the thing that concerns you the most with the data that they're using now?
Jeremy, there's a lot, but I'm gonna take the path of least resistance. What day is today?
Today's election day.
Today's election day. Today is election day, and all of the posts of people wanting to support their party, their candidate, for whatever personal reasons they may be. Okay, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. What's scary and how this can be used against us is depending on how do I put this and not sound crazy? Depending on the agenda and the narrative and the goals and perhaps political affiliations and inside influences and outside influences to Facebook, things can be really manipulated. And one of my biggest fears is one of my biggest fears, Jeremy, is that these tech companies, and we'll say Facebook, but there's others out there that are equally as scary and disruptive. But Facebook today, they have the ability to create their own algorithms and to use these algorithms to not just motivate us to buy something, but they can be used for those that perhaps aren't into research, or they don't know how to critically think because they just haven't been exposed to it. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just that they haven't had any exposure to real critical thinking. Well, I see this, but why is it that way? Maybe they're not peeling that onion to get down to the center of what's the real issue. What source can be cited so that I can make a really good decision going forward. Instead, there's Facebook and there's other channels out there that will feed you exactly what they want you to hear. And if you see it day in and day out, and then you comment on it, and then 30 or 40 other people agree with you, is that real? Is that a real narrative? It's a story, but is it a real narrative that can be cited back to a source and be verified? Not fact checkers, but just, can it be verified? Is it in the literature? Is it in a book? Is there recording of somebody saying that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, can you verify? Can you validate it? That's what scares me the most is the potential demise and destruction of America. And that's I mean, we're in an economy and an environment where there's several hot buttons, and all it's going to take is one to cause a domino effect, and we're ripe. So I think that would be the scariest thing is how it can literally change the course of civilization if it wanted to. Because guess what? It's happening. We're just conditioned to it, and we're not really seeing what's happening. That's the scary part. The other scary part is the ignorance. And I'm not saying this to be mean or to make anybody feel bad, but when you just don't know what you don't know, that's unconscious incompetence, which could be just ignorance. You just don't know. And I think a lot of our population, I can't cite a source, but just based on my interactions with people and the questions that I have, and I ask for people, and I can see it. I can spot the tells and see the weak signals looming on the outside. I think there's some intentional division happening, not just amongst political parties, but schools and kids and education and gun rights and our freedoms, our liberties. I mean, just it's all under attack right now.
Yeah, and I really do think, when you look bigger picture, right? You see what you see on Facebook, but then when you start really going through and you're having these type of conversations and you really start using critical thinking, is realizing that there are people in power in this world that want to maintain power. How do you maintain power? You create division.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing those seeds being sown through these different platforms. I know everybody's excited about Elon Musk taking over Twitter. Great, awesome. Yet it's still happening on that platform as well. And
Yeah.
because it's all the same people that are really excited about it. So it's that group think, and that gets pushed out there and people comment on it. They think it's fact and true. And
Yep.
And the reality is it might not be.
It might not be, but they take it as the gospel.
Yeah. Or you ask, somebody says, well, I don't know the answer to that. And first thing you hear is Google it. And
yeah, right.
Google's got all the
Google
answers. Right. and so, I think we've just been conditioned to not really even go do the research. I remember doing research papers, growing up through school and then through college, and you'd have to cite the sources and you'd have to have at least 3 sources. And there's just not that anymore. It's just like, okay, well, that's what 100 people agreed to. That must be the case. Or and it's true. They're feeding you. Like if you go and you look at your feeds, and this is what I've noticed lately, especially around election, is I'm Republican. I'll say that I am. And a lot of my friends that are Democrat, their posts are not showing up into my feed.
Yeah.
It's all this people that think the same way that I do. So it just kind of reinforces what I think, and I think it creates a greater division. And so you start seeing and noticing these patterns, and this is what you do. This is your livelihood, is studying this stuff.
Yeah,
and you're seeing it in real time.
I am. And on that same note, on that same example, let's just say you cited your sources. You were relevant. You go to your grave knowing you spoke the truth and this is where it came from. And then you let somebody else come in and say, hey, this works for me. You know what? I can get a hold of this, but I have this opinion. Great. Now we can talk. Because if you have your perspective, I have my perspective, there's a third alternative. And guess what? We meet in the middle. And that's another Stephen Covey book, The Third Alternative. It's a long, slow read, but it's a great book. And it talks just about that exactly. That's my number one takeaway. And I read that years ago, and I'm like, and I've always been this way. I can talk politics. I can talk religion. I can talk guns. I can talk anything with anybody. And I've proven it time and time and time again, because I really seek to understand before being understood. I want to know their perspective. I really do. And then I want to know how they got to that perspective. Are they a product of their environment? Is this the way it's always been? And then it's a generational thing? Or are they researchers? Are they this? Can they take a stand in a box and say, I believe in this because of this. I believe in this because of this. I have this worldview because of how I was raised. I'm not thinking about my past. I'm not blaming my parents. This is who I am, and I'm going to leave a mark in this world, and this is my blueprint for my worldview. Great. Tell me all about it, and I'll tell you about mine. And we'll share, and I promise you, anybody out there, I don't care what you want to talk about. When we get done talking, we're going to walk away with a double fist bump and a hug and be like, man, that was exhilarating. Thank you for that conversation. That's the way I have to roll, because I really am genuinely concerned about other people's well-being and how they think. Why do they think the way they think? No judgment.
So is that the danger of social media, is you could have those conversations one-on-one like we're doing right now, and it flows, and you could ask an additional question. You peel back the onion. You can go deeper. It's more relational, whereas you get to social media, it's like a statement.
Yep.
And do you think that's part of, do you think that's part of why social media, when you're looking at it from the non-positive aspect, is that it doesn't people have replaced conversation with social media, and it's really not a conversation.
It's not. It's not.
So my next question is I have children. I've got a junior in high school. I've got one that's going to be a freshman this next year, and they know nothing different. You know, they've grown up in the social media world, and I want to get your thoughts on, you know, the children today and the way that they communicate. Obviously, they're going to be our leaders of tomorrow. What's the impact you're seeing as we move down the road?
Tolerance. I'm seeing much intolerance in Generation Z. I really am. It's that instant gratification. Not all, but if we were to, what are the characteristics of Gen Z? And I have a cohort member that is studying Gen Z, and we have a lot of conversations about this group because she's creating leadership programs for undergraduate students. So she's in this space all the time, and it's intolerance, Jeremy. And I don't know if it has to do, with them being a product of their environment, which I'm sure a lot of it is. It really is. But I would still like to think that there's some parental influence and guidance of how to talk, how to react, how to conduct yourself as a productive citizen. And I just think right now the number one thing I'm seeing in that Gen Z, these younger kids, because the leading edge of the millennial group, they're in their 40s, they're in midlife. They get it. The front end didn't really have much social media, but that latter part did. And right now, Gen Z, the leading edge is about 21, 22. So that's the group that I'm saying are our future leaders that we are here to mold and to help and to guide and to be coaches and mentors for this group, as well as, the older millennial generation to help out this Gen Z generation as well. But here's again, they're product of their environment. Gen Z, you opened up. The kids grew up with social media. They don't know anything different. So they're a product of their environment. Now, I'm the leading edge of the baby boomer. I'm 57 years old. I was born in 1965. So I'm at it's either 64 for baby boomer or 65 for baby boomer, depending on what study you go by. I'm going by Strauss and Howe, the authors of The Fourth Turning. So I'm the leading edge of the Gen X, but the greatest generation, the older generation, like my grandparents that are still living, or some of them, like my mother, who's in her 70s, 80s, they have a hard time communicating with this Gen Z, because everything is like this. They're just, they're sitting together texting, maybe because they don't want to say out loud what they're really thinking or what they're talking about. But either way, this is the tool. This is the medium. That is the device. So, perhaps we should really look at what time we're in. We're in the fourth industrial revolution. 5G is about to, in the next few years will be the norm if the United States allows it to be scaled out. And if 5G is our day-to-day norm, our day-to-day activity where we're using it, Jeremy, you're going to see a whole lot more of things come out that this Gen Z generation will absolutely rock and own. So they are our future leaders. Our future is technology. Our future is experiential. Our future is virtual reality, augmented reality, the Internet of Things, computer brain interface. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I think this generation coming through is going to be just fine. I really do, because that's all they've known. So they're going to be innovators in it. They're end users. they're designers. They get this space, and they're gamers. A lot of research on gamers and how they're able to retain things, remember things, how they're more productive than non-gamers. It's amazing. So there's some good, there's some bad. It just is, it's something, Jeremy, that we have to be aware of and encourage, but give them the freedom, but not, it's a dance. It really is a dance. And I would just say that as a grandparent of the Gen Z, my grandkids are 13 and 11. They use technology, not a lot, but they use it. And their parents are very responsible. They're very aware of that we're the consumer, and they're helping the kids understand that technology isn't the all-to go-to, that you still have to be able to carry on a conversation. You still should know how to critically think and not go by what they say, but what is cite your sources. So I think this generation is going to be okay. I have a lot of hope and prayer for them, and I have confidence that they're going to be okay. They're going to be the ones, when you and I are in our walkers, they're going to be the ones dealing with all of this Star Wars kind of technology, and they were born and raised in it. So I think they're in the right place. We just need to guide them and coach them through it.
I think that's great advice. It's funny you brought up about how they could all be in a room together. We just hosted a homecoming dance at our house, and we had about 14 girls and boys here. We did dinner, and they were sitting there. It's just completely quiet. It's awkward anyways at that age, but completely quiet. And they're all down on their phones, and they're communicating with each other around the room, having conversations. And it's relational, but they just, I think it's important to, I like the way you put that, because sometimes I have a hard time dealing with it, is to embrace that that's the way they communicate and understand, and in some ways learn to adapt in my communication to the way that they communicate, because that's how they communicate and that's how they understand. Yeah, I go back to, I grew up in a house with one landline, it was attached to the wall. Get one of those Gen Zers to dial a phone. They don't even know. They sit there and poke at it. But that was the way we communicated at that time. And I know, probably my grandparents and my great grandparents were like, well, why do they have that in their house? They just didn't have that. So I think it's also the transition over time of the way we communicate.
Yep. Amen. It is. And there are people that will take a staunch position. Nope, you're going to do it my way. And now guess what? You're imposing yourself on these kids. And what are they going to do? They're going to put the hand up, talk to the hand, and then there comes some resistance. Good, healthy conversation, debate, maybe even raise your voice once in a while is acceptable, as long as you get your point across, and as long as you can just meet at the fence line. Let's talk over the fence, and rather than throwing stuff over the fence or lobbing stuff at them, be neighborly and be neighborly with your kids. Like, they're people too. Here's another thing I want to mention. There are cognitive issues where some people see who are neurodiversity on the spectrum versus neurotypical people. Jeremy, those on the spectrum live and conform to a world that was not designed for them. Period. Society has been designed, from our education to our employment. There's nothing that is untouched. That our society, it was developed and designed specifically for neurotypical people that aren't on the spectrum. Examples: autism, ADD, ADHD, traumatic brain injury, Asperger's. There's a handful. There's more than a handful. This population, I am seeing, thrives in the technology space. They're innovative. It allows them to communicate effectively in a way they can't when they're in person. So again, and I say this, if the listeners out there, if you have a spouse, a child that is neurodiverse, and they have a difficult time communicating with neurotypical people, that's a conversation that really should be had and is of much importance. It is super significant that you identify that and don't attack them, but just watch and listen. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I love that saying. And this is an application to where technology and Facebook, you got to look at your population. Are they neurotypical or are they neurodiverse? That's a wonderful starting point as an ethnographer and as a researcher to see what's the playing field like, and what are the strengths and the weaknesses of each, and how can we get them to meet in the middle to communicate effectively. That's what my doctorate is about.
I love that. I can't wait to read that paper. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
Addiction, is it real?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen there's people out there that offer addiction services for social media. So you
as they should.
Yeah.
As they should. It absolutely is. I have several friends that take 90-day breaks from social media just because they know they're getting addicted. And it takes a very, very intentional being, a way of being, to not be addicted to social media, because it fires on everything narcissistic about our personality. It's just miracle grow for narcissism. And then we're all narcissistic in certain ways. We are, period. I mean, we are. And if you tell me you're not, let's have a conversation and give me 30 minutes and I'll identify it. I won't beat you up on it, but you'll have a little paradigm shift. And once you know that, and you know, you start looking at ego and you start looking at different things. For me, I bring everything back to my faith. You know, whose am I? Who am I here to please? And am I doing the right thing throughout the course of the day? So I feel I have a fairly good check on the addiction side of it. I've even done safe to fail experiments by not responding to somebody right away, knowing that they might be offended because, hey, you didn't get back to me right away. You usually do. You took a whole day. Well, it wasn't really important. It wasn't life or death. And I'm demonstrating self-control. I have to do that from time to time. I mean, I'm 20 some years sober. I got really, really good at drinking. So I get addiction firsthand, and I have an addictive personality, and it's something that I personally have to be aware of daily, pick and choose my battles. And I love what Gary says, Gary Keller. He says, you know, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to another. And so I own that deep.
Yeah, you know, they talk about the equivalence of the dopamine hits when, you know, every time your phone chimes and you pick it up. It's like crack cocaine, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is. And it's fun to watch. Like when you know that you don't have to do it, but other people are like, oh, I mean, they stop talking to a person that they're in a conversation with, like right in front of them, to look at their phone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how rude is that?
Yeah. Speaking of addictions, I saw a photo from another agent in Houston. He was at a polling site. I don't know if you're really supposed to do this, but he took a picture. Wasn't in the voting area, so I think he was okay. But he was in the line, and every single person was looking down at their phone. And all I could think about was, chiropractors across the social media webs, cheering that they're going to have all these people with neck issues that they're going to be able to work on. Because they're sitting there looking at their phone. There's no conversation going on. It's just quiet, and I experienced that. I did early voting. I went in the first day, and everybody's just standing in line. They're just sitting there looking at their phone. And I had to be really purposeful and intentional to just start a conversation with somebody and they thought it was weird. They're like, oh, I don't know if we can talk here,
Yeah.
but we've been conditioned into that with social media. And I think especially COVID, I mean, that's a whole nother topic. I might do a whole episode on, but, with COVID, I think it just sent that, fast forward.
Mhm.
And, because it was the place where everybody was finding some sort of connectivity. But I want to jump to something that hit the news this week. Donald Trump was attempting this. They kind of ran out of time on it. I don't know if it's the FSC or I don't know who it was. It was somebody pretty high up in government had come out, and they made the verbal statement that TikTok was a threat. It should be banned. And that's been kind of a conversation that's been going on for some time now. There's the conversation that with China owning TikTok, that there's a security threat. And is that a valid concern? Should we truly be concerned about this?
I spoke with somebody yesterday that is a programmer, writes code, develops, does all sorts of high level stuff that is certified with many different degrees and certifications, that has a lot of time in this space. And I asked him, I says, first of all, do you use TikTok? He said, nope. I said, okay, cool. I'll go to the next question. I says, what do you think about TikTok? He goes, from what perspective? And I said, really, it's a China owned app. What do you think of it? And I said, before you answer, I says, one of my concerns again is data. He says, that's my number one concern is data and what they're doing with it. It's tough enough when our own government is monitoring us and watching us, and that whole Big Brother, persona that we all have of them. That's one thing, and it's unsettling. Period. It's very unsettling. But now let's just take it to an adversary of ours that has only their goal, their best interest in mind, not ours at all. So from that perspective, that it's a China-owned app, and that their algorithms here for us are much different than the app that they have in China. They're completely different as far as what's shown and the things that you can do. It's very scary. And I'm to the point that if somebody sends me a TikTok video through Messenger or it's on Facebook, because it'll show you on the bottom there, TikTok, I don't watch it. I don't watch it. And have I been, Rick, you're a worrywart, or you're this or that, call me what you will. I'm just not going to watch your video on TikTok. I can't do it. Now, have I clicked on enough things in my life as a researcher and as a social media participant to have things that I absolutely, should be concerned about? Absolutely. But for me, I just don't want to give China the edge that they're looking for. I just don't want to do it. So I haven't done it. And if I had kids, I would be very, very adamant. This is a non-negotiable. I'm sorry, honey, you can't do your little video on TikTok. And until somebody can really convince me otherwise, that's my stance on it, Jeremy.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I'd had an account for a period of time, and I was trying to use it for coaching. And I'm like, okay, how many people really come here to hire a coach? I'm not the dancing type, so that wasn't going to work for me. And I just saw the other content that it was feeding me. And it just wasn't stuff that was healthy or things that I think wanted in my life or to be exposed to. And I read something about China specifically was doing that. Like, they would show that type of stuff in the Western hemisphere, but they would never show that to their own people.
Not at all.
And
nothing even close.
Yeah. So it's really interesting that how they're doing that. But then you have to ask yourself, I always like to ask myself, well, what is the intention behind it? Like,
Yep.
why are they doing that? And to me, it's to demoralize and corrupt us to a point where we're weaker.
Yeah.
And,
Back to that division, back to breaking us
yeah.
down and programming us. I mean, I don't know your audience size and what their beliefs are. I have a pretty good idea, but I don't know if anybody in the audience has ever heard of Black Mirror or heard this saying, the Black Mirror episode. It's a series, futuristic series. Some of the stuff can get kind of weird and twisted, but we right now with social media are living in a Black Mirror episode, period. Like it's worthy of TV. And where it's going with the social credit score, like, China already has adopted their technology. When you listen to the rhetoric that's being spewed, especially during this election, I'm able to read the weak signals. I'm telling you, by the end of this decade, I think we probably will have equal or a little less than what China has. As far as a global, like, big brother watching you, everything that you do. And I think what's going to happen, Jeremy, is the United States or the world, but particularly the United States, will have experienced something that will cause a paradigm shift in the way the public views privacy and data, to the point. Now think about this. I'm going to ask a question now. What if everything we're talking about, and what if everything we have concerns about, all of a sudden an event comes in and causes us to not take this tsunami of what we're fearful for, but to embrace our arms around it and be grateful for everything that is happening in the technology space? Now, that's a complete paradigm shift. That is a total and complete paradigm shift in the way we think about technology. Right now, it serves a good and it serves a bad, but we've been kind of focused on the threats. What should we be concerned about? How do we protect our own, our kids, our businesses, our the security, everything about us? Well, what if none of that mattered and we thought it was awesome? We embraced it. I think there's going to be an event this decade that will cause that paradigm shift, and we will embrace all of the BS. I can't put it any other way. Let that one sink in for a bit. I mean, that's a cigar and a campfire talk.
Yeah, cigar, maybe some bourbon. We might have to go.
Yeah, maybe some bourbon. Yeah, exactly.
That's when you start getting in, because it's thinking completely to the opposite of probably where this conversation started today. It's going all the way to the other extreme, and knowing that could also be a possibility.
Yeah.
I wonder what would cause that. I'm trying to think of an event that would make that happen. I've got a few in mind. We'll save that. We'll save that for campfire talk.
We'll save that for campfire.
All right. So one of the last topics I want to hit on is the impact on Christianity and faith, and I want to specifically go to the time when churches shut down. They shut down because of COVID. Some of them a lot longer than others. Some got back together quicker, depend on where you lived. But a lot of them had to figure out that time. They looked at social media, and the church typically doesn't, I don't think, favors social media, but then they looked at it as, okay, how do we embrace it to make sure that we're still feeding our congregations? And then you had this weird shift again where everybody's kind of back together. And then when you go to church, it's like, where did everybody go? And maybe or maybe not, they're following online. A lot of the churches are now doing both. They still have the online component, and they have the in-person component. But I'd have to think, and from what I've seen when I've participated online, is there's not as many going to it. So what has this all done, and how does social media play a role in the church and with faith?
Yeah, great question. And I'm just going to kind of mirror and what you talked about, because you really just you just unfolded it. Prior to COVID, there were streaming services that churches had. Your tech enabled offered streaming services, but then they shut everything down. And let's stream. And the churches that I interviewed with and spoke to, as far as I have a ministry that I it's not so much a ministry, it's called Minding God's Business. It's a prayer ministry, a Facebook page, but their attendance increased, their donations, givings, and tithes increased. And then when it opened up, you still had people go back, but people just got used to small group. They had watch parties and Bible study groups now became watch groups, and I think it really strengthened the community. Now, not all. There are some people that just said, I'm not a techie. It's not the same thing. I want to talk to people. I want to shake hands. I need that hug. I want the coffee. And I just want to see people. And I want to, they're very relational. They want to experience the service. They want to be moved by prayer and music and worship. And so I think it's both ways, Jeremy. I really do. I think it was good. And I think it was a challenge. But yet on the other side of it, there's always an opportunity to course correct and what's possible, what is possible, and what did we learn? What was the takeaway? I mean, that's the real question. That's a wonderful study that could be done with like 10 churches and then to go in, a qualitative narrative study where you're knee to knee with people, interviewing them, asking them, and to see what their thoughts were. I mean, if one hasn't been done, that would be a wonderful study. I mean, that would be fun.
I mean, my thoughts around it in thinking about it is, I think what the churches have learned in that experience is that their congregation that they had pre-COVID, their relationship with the member probably wasn't as strong as they thought it was. It was church on Sunday, and then we'll see you in 7 days.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of churches learn that in that experience. I have nothing quantitative, or I don't have 3 fact sources to support that. It's purely observation.
Yeah.
But seeing that, it was interesting to see. Even some of the churches not making it. They didn't have the stability or that congregational togetherness to be able to make it through that time, whether for streaming or not. So but I do think I go back to you saying an event that happens, it's thinking of that possibility of, okay, now what are all the things churches could use social media for? How do they develop out their youth groups? How do they connect their youth group kids to the people that they help? There's all different types of things that they could do. When you think to the other possibility.
Yeah. And just from the communication messaging side of it, the ability to create groups, small groups, prayer groups, that's huge. I mean, that really needs to be that's worthy of mentioning, that it's a quick way, an effective way for those that want to participate to learn about a need. And I'm a huge, you just can't tell me prayer doesn't work, because I've experienced it on so many levels. But to be able to pray for somebody, just little short prayers, just a random act of prayer, I call it, just to send somebody, open it up, think about them, and just to send a nice little message, a one-on-one message, or like the example I used was the group, so, but I'm with you. I think the real question is, what did the churches learn, and how are they taking that data, that learning, those experiences, and serving their congregation, their people.
Yeah, no, it's really powerful. And I appreciate the time today. We talked about the good, we talked about the bad, but we also talked about possibilities. And that's what I like about you and the way that you think. Critical thinking, that's really important to me. I know it's definitely important to you. Social media is one of those things. It's not going to go away. It's going to be, how do we embrace it, or what does the next version look like? Just like we had the rotary telephone and then the punch button, and then we had the cell phones. This is the new way that we communicate. And I appreciate you sharing that insight with us today.
Oh, I'm always here to serve, sir. You know that.
So, Rick, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, they have more questions specifically about social media and what you're working on. How do they connect with you?
Really the best way to get a hold of me would be my cell phone, 480-600-7578. My email, rick@rickborden.com. But I manage, and I'm the curator of 64 different Facebook pages and groups. I have 4 active YouTube channels, depending on what lane that I'm in. But really, hit me up on Facebook or Messenger, and I'd love to talk to anybody about really anything. Whether it's technology, urban farming, really the future, political, especially the fourth turning, which is a topic we didn't talk about, but I'll plant a seed. Research the fourth turning. That's something to go look at. Strauss and Howe, they've got a book called The Fourth Turning. And then I just wanted to kind of share with everybody to do a little bit of their own research, segueing away how to get a hold of me. But one of the things I want to plant a seed on is for people to look at, and that's called privacy calculus. It's a term in the technology space, and what it really to give you a quick little summary of what it is, it's about us giving permission to big tech. Period. It's privacy calculus, but really what the topic is about, in my concern, is how readily available we are willing to push a button and just give all of our rights away in the technology space. So privacy calculus is there.
And who you're giving it to.
And who you're giving it to, and what they're going to do with it to leverage against you. Because we're the product, Jeremy. We are the product. But the best way to get a hold of me is you go to YouTube or email me, cell phone. I'm gonna get back to you quicker if you hit me up on my cell phone, either a text message, because sometimes email, if I don't know who you are, and you might end up, if you're not a normal incoming thing, you might end up my spam or my clutter box. But through Facebook or to email me or hit me up on my cell phone would be best.
Again, Rick, thank you for your time today. Absolutely fascinating. A little bit different than what I normally do, and I think it's super important. And it applies not only to business. These are life conversations we're having here. These are conversations we're having with our parents, our grandparents, our kids, is how to understand and navigate through all this. So again, I appreciate your time today and your expertise. Rick, I thank you.
You're very welcome. Can I close in prayer real quick?
Absolutely.
Oh, great. All right. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this wonderful, glorious day. I want to thank you for my relationship with Jeremy. And I just want to ask, Lord, that you bless him, you bless his family, you bless all of his clients. And Lord, you just have a protective hand over the topics that we spoke about today. And I just want to thank you for your son, Jesus Christ. May we all learn to live and create a relationship with your son. In your heavenly name, I pray. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. Until next time, onward and upward.
Thank you for listening to the Survive, Scale, Soar podcast. If you heard something that made a difference in your life today, share it with someone that might benefit, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Learn more about the host of this podcast and coaching services offered by Red Hawk Coaching by visiting www.redhawkcoaching.com.